It's Friday. It's April 5th, 2024. Um, on this day, I went for a walk on Bell Boulevard, which still has this flag flying. It still uses this monetary currency of the United States of America, with ONE on the back of it and the INGODWE trust. Um, it's still Jackson for the White House. It's still Hamilton with the U.S. Treasury. And it is still Franklin for Independence Hall. Um, while I was out, I'm trying to think of exactly how to preface this with what do I have to document and what do I not have to document for my own edification and medical note of my human experience here, or whatever word that they use for the biologicals that have anatomy, physiology, but also some holographic prominence. Um, so there's this total eclipse going on over the heartland. Um, they're making a big hoopla out of it, I suppose. Um, but that was overshadowed today by something else going on, which was a rare event. We actually had an earthquake in New York. Um, they televised a piece of it. I surveyed the persons in the house. I was out of the residence at the time. Um, but the 1949 flower that I arrived to, she was very shaken, literally, by this event and wanted to tell me all about it. Tia Frio 1975, also a Taurus, Taurus in astrological terms. I'm still astrological Leo. And my sundial doesn't exactly line up with the rest of the genetics in this house. But that's been an ongoing event since I was a child and calling in to what I thought were superheroes. Anyhow, so I had a different experience. I was out on the boulevard. Um, I made some mentions on Facebook of what I saw since I've had this broken ankle and I'm on the mend. And so I went for a walk and some things had changed. So I made documentation of them. Not sure why they changed. Um, and so that was my morning. And then I came back. They said that President Biden today, was taking a helicopter ride to assess the wreckage in Maryland of the bridge of Francis Key Scott. So that's where President Joe Biden was, according to the Channel 7 News. Um, Mayor Eric Adams seems to be under investigation with the FBI for something to do with Turkey and some consulate. I myself am in the residence now, going through some of the documentation that the New York City Public School has wanted my son to learn about. Their school also felt this shock. But how can, again, the ponderance of things that most people don't worry about, like how could you be in time and space in such close proximity and relativity to your relatives and they have a completely different time and spatial experience than yourself. I know better than to ask these questions. They're more of a rhetoric question starting with an RH. And so I am keeping to myself on that ponderance. But it did come home to be of what they wanted Anthony to know about. One of the papers is "My city is better than your city," something about Sumer. Then early China and the birth of Chinese civilization. I also noticed the name of the ruler that they chose. I'm keeping that inside my son's private folder. Then they talked about race at the school, restate, answer, cite evidence, and explain. And then they have this really interesting article, an excerpt from A Legend of the Wooden Shoes. Oh my eo me eo. This reminds me of my youth. And here, still in New York, on Long Island, it talks about the elves, the tree elf. It talks about, oh, Mikeny3. My life just totally like, oh my God, what tree was that in the corner of whatever and whatever, whatever, whatever. It was a different one that's mentioned in here, but I'm just whatever and whatever. So, it is interesting in, what does God actually mean? So back in the day, I mean, this references Holland. Back in the day, I just had this conversation with Lewis. So I'm just putting all of these papers inside my son's folder. Um, Back in the day, there was this really weird spatial anomaly, and I wound up coming home with these shoes. And I told Lewis this story. Um, I don't know what store I was in or who I was with. I really can't remember. But I know I went shopping on a special shopping trip with some persons from my youth, and we were in this store, and I was coerced into buying these like really like strange shoes, and they were wooden. I mean, but it was so lovingly hand carved, and I didn't know anything about shoes. So they said I should buy these shoes, and I did. They were like solid wooden blocks on the bottom, but like just like lovingly hand carved. They had these gold tacks and then a piece of leather that went over them with a strap on the back. And I tried them on. They were not easy to walk in at all. But what really was symbolically significant was as I entered the high school in my elf year, um, on the terrazzo floor, there was such a reverberance of just like this resonant sound of me walking down the hallways of CSH. Um, and my father said to me as I'm telling the story, he's like, "Well, I'm sure you made such noise and such like this like the pageantry, like you just it must have meant like such a mark on all of the persons that you were going to high school with at the time." And I said, "Actually, the way that I reflect on it is I there were only two faces from my youth that were still in that building. I don't know where everybody else went. I don't know what happened to them, but they were no longer in attendance at Cold Spring Harbor when I went back to high school in the 11th grade. Um, so I don't know what to say about that. I ran into a few faces, but I remember walking from the cafeteria towards where Mr. Healy's room is down that corridor. Incidentally, that's where um, the person who said he wanted to marry me and would find me when it was time for marriage took a photo with me with that big hairdo. Um, and he and I walked to the payphone, I remember, down the hallway. I didn't know where it was, past the principal's office. He took me, at that time, and I think that was third grade, that was Miss Arvan's class. And it was the Millridge Inn. And then we went, and I don't remember how I got there, but we went, and he um, walked me down the hallway. And those were terrazzo floors, just so we're on the same page. Um, Anyhow, in 11th grade, when I returned back, I left St. Dominic's because of some persons who threatened me, and went back to Cold Spring Harbor. I was walking down the hallway, and those wooden clogs, I think that's what they call them, made such a loud sound. And I didn't think of the memory until I just went to St. Francis, for this vision problem I was having of haze, which is more of like an intracellular thing. And one of the doctors was wearing a different version of these shoes. They were clogs, but they didn't have the sound quality that the real blocks of wood have as you walk on a terrazzo floor. I mean, again, one would think in that grade I would be at like a Trump beauty pageant in high heels, but that is not what my third grade representative had in store for me. Instead, I was walking down terrazzo floors on solid wood blocks, just with this really loud reverberance. So anyhow, so that's what this story that the New York City Public School and the teachers put forth about the tree elves and the sprites and some lovely folklore that they wanted my son. I don't know that it really resonated with him internally. He and I are going through a little strife at the moment. He is in middle school, and I am with. This morning, they also put on a golden toilet that someone stole from some castle somewhere. I was like, oh, how wonderful for that, going with the golden toilet paper I had as a whatever before my children arrived. It is quite a commode. Um, Anyhow, so this is what this looks like. We'll start with President Biden, then we'll go to Mayor Eric Adams, and it's on the Channel 7.
Biden got an aerial tour of the wreckage of the deadly bridge collapse in Baltimore. His visit comes as crews continue to clear the debris from the harbor to get the port of Baltimore up and running again. In addition to meeting with the families of the victims who were killed, the president also delivered a message to employers who rely on the port, an operation that is linked to more than 8,000 jobs. The president has already pledged federal support to help the city recover, including a vow to pay for the entire cost of reconstructing the bridge.
A strong jobs report is yielding positive results on the stock market.
All right, so
We're pulling some breaking news right now, and the FBI is investigating whether Mayor Adams received upgrades when flying on Turkish Airlines. The issue is part of an ongoing investigation involving an airline executive, aides to the mayor, and Adams himself. Now, sources tell ABC News the federal investigators want to know whether Adams traded any upgrades for political favor, specifically whether it prompted him to push for approval of a new Turkish consulate when he was Brooklyn Borough president. Now, attorneys representing Adams say all of the mayor's trips to Turkey were by the book, and speculation is not evidence.
The search is on for the hit-and-run driver who...
Now, I'm in Queens, and this is still the flag, both in Brooklyn and in Queens. I'm going to pause this for a second. Okay, so this is a commercial where they're showing the eclipse that's going to be coming.
And we're going to take you behind the scenes of our eclipse coverage. We're going to speak with...
I think they speak of these types of events as unifying events as far as signaling and in sequencing of events.
A photographer who is hoping to get the shot that's seen around the world.
Monday afternoon, all eyes to the sky for a total solar eclipse, a breathtaking celestial event. Eclipse across America. Streaming on ABC News Live, National Geographic Channel, Nat Geo Wild, Disney Plus, Hulu, and live on ABC.
It was
Okay, and this was the report when the earthquake first
right here
hit.
from Toronto. Simone, tell me what you heard.
So I was in my hotel room in Midtown, and just all of a sudden the mirror started clacking really loud. And it was my first day in town, so I don't know if this is normal. Is it construction nearby? And I kind of walked around the room to make sure it wasn't just localized there. And is it actually everything in the building?
How much did the mirror move?
Quite a bit. Like it felt like maybe like if someone were on the other side of the wall banging it, like that kind of movement. So yeah.
You have felt these before in Toronto. Can you bring me through that and how this one felt in comparison?
Yeah, there was one in Toronto maybe 12 years ago that was quite large, and similar thing that I remember a TV at the time was shaking quite a lot. That one felt a bit bigger than this one and maybe a bit longer as well.
What do you make of all this?
I mean, I don't know. I saw it was 4.7. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an earthquake expert, but like that sounds bigger than what I felt.
Yeah,
so yeah.
Right? That's I thought the same exact thing. 4.7, 4.8. I mean, we don't get those type of things around here very often.
Right.
But I'm glad you're okay, and enjoy the rest of your time here in New York.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. That's Simone from Toronto. Thank you so much for joining us. I also want to bring you up to date that there was a woman we spoke with here. She was walking up and down the street. She says her building just around the corner from here lost power for a certain amount of time. It came back on, but there was a time period where the building went completely dark. So I'm sure we're going to start hearing about more of those stories as well. For me personally, I know you guys mentioned we were sitting in the studio and I'm sitting in the chair. This was the first earthquake I've ever felt. And I just kind of felt like I was swaying a little bit, and then I heard the computers kind of moving and the lights up ahead kind of moving, and someone who was sitting there at the other desk, we both looked at each other and we said, "Is that an earthquake?" And then we went to the window, I think just to like look outside and see what was going on. That was like our natural human reaction, was to go to the window and to see what was happening, and then we realized what was going on. So it really was quite an experience. As I tell people, it was enough time for your brain to realize something is happening. I think this is an earthquake, and should I get out of this building? And that was enough time for all that to happen. So crazy stuff. Back to you guys.
So what are we talking about? Like 20 seconds, Pedro?
20 to 30 seconds.
Thanks,
20 to 30
Kristen.
seconds.
Thanks to you.
She was in studio with us, and she walked over to the window, as she mentioned. Me and Danny and I were sitting here, and we looked at each other. It was about 20 to 30 seconds, and we're in the middle of conducting an interview. We both didn't know, do we stop the interview? What do we do? You have these lights hanging above you. You get nervous, right, Danny?
Yeah, we could see the lights shaking, and I said on my mic, "Was that an earthquake?"
Yeah.
And then I felt crazy, so I didn't say it
Words
again.
you don't expect to say on the air in the Northeast.
Yeah.
On the air. And
Yeah.
then it took a second for the USGS to populate. I immediately went to the website, and it took a little bit, and then finally we got...
Now, these people are trained in whatever it is that they do in broadcasting. I have no idea. I don't know what a GS whatever is. I don't know what website to go to. Like, there was no training classes on any of this stuff in any of the rooms or areas that I've been in my human experience. They're claiming the epicenter was in Lebanon, but Lebanon, New Jersey, just south of New York.
And this epicenter, really, it's between Lebanon and Tewksbury, which Tewksbury is slightly to the north. We want to head out to our Tony Yates. She is live in New Brunswick, which is just east of the epicenter. And I know, Tony, you've been speaking to people who felt the shaking this morning.
Oh yeah, a lot of people felt the shaking. First.
And then they went to like this live broadcast of Afterquake, and there was this like reading off of personnel. Again, I don't know. It seemed odd, but I guess but again, like, who am I to like whatever in the whatever. I was still trying to process, and I'm of course in time and space, and like how does like the whatever in science that it's not necessarily classroom science that I'm like pondering now. I had plenty to digest myself.
This is Tony Yates reporting. We do want to head to OEM in New York City, where the mayor and you can see many members, the commissioners, the OEM are speaking about today's earthquake. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Lewis Martin, Chief of Staff Camille Joseph Varlick, Emergency Management Commissioner Zach Iskel.
Oh, so I guess this is at the GODONETWO at an HCGH somewhere. If if the ELF ELEVEN, and then there's for the DOLLAR, and then in other brackets US, to update that record. And then in a different conversation, there's the ID with the EGO and the SUPEREGO, which is the super ego and the ego. But again, that's like a Freud conversation, and that's like basic science of psychology, not like in temporal rifts or, mental disease or any of the crazy stuff that the alien scientists, meaning the persons that don't necessarily have legal status, I can't tell when I come upon them in the field. And I don't normally ask them for identification because there's such a large amount of them, and I don't know by what way of entry they've gained lawful citizenship. Part of some of the national security apparatus like concerns I have. But here we are.
Police Department Commissioner Edward Caban and senior members of the NYPD leadership, FDNY Commissioner Laura Kavanaugh, Public Schools Chancellor David Banks, Department of Buildings Commissioner Jimmy Otto, Department of Sanitation Commissioner Jessica Tisch, Department of Transportation Commissioner Yadanis Rodriguez, Department of Environmental Protection Commissioner Ray Agarwal, Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs Commissioner Manny Castro, Housing Preservation and Development Commissioner Adolfo Carrion, Mayor's Office of Community Affairs Commissioner Fred Kreisman, New York City Health and Hospital Senior Vice President and Chief Quality Officer Dr. Eric Way, NYCHA Executive VP of Operations Support Services Keith Grossman, MTA CEO Jano Lieber, Con Ed President Matt Ketchke. So first I'd like to introduce Mayor Adams.
Thanks so much, Dean Levy, and I'm sure there are many questions that need to be answered. All of us felt in some way or another the earthquake that hit our city around 10:23 a.m. We felt the impact of this 4.7 magnitude earthquake. The epicenter was in Lebanon, New Jersey, about 50 miles from New York City. And as you know, this is a developing situation. You're always concerned about aftershocks after an earthquake. But New Yorkers should go about their normal day. First responders are working to make sure the city's safe. And one thing we do so well in our city is bring together all of the agencies that are involved and our partners and other entities. Everything from the MTA to the Department of Buildings, the parents who are concerned about their school children. Chancellor Banks would be here to report on that, but we say over and over again, the safest place for our students, we believe, will continue to be in school. At this point, we do not have any reports of major impacts to our infrastructure or injuries. But of course, we're still assessing the situation and we'll continue to update the public. We're in touch with the White House, the governor's office, and local elected officials. And I encourage New Yorkers to check on their loved ones to make sure that they are fine, not only from the infrastructure damage, but this could be a traumatic moment for individuals going through an earthquake. And if you feel an aftershock, Drop to the floor, cover your head and neck, and take cover under a solid piece of furniture next to an interior wall or in a doorway. So I want to thank the emergency staff and first responders for their work to keep New Yorkers safe. Earthquakes don't happen every day in New York. So this can be extremely traumatic. The number of texts, calls, and inquiries that people sent out to not only our administration but to family members checking on them, we know how this can impact you. But we're ready for the unexpected. This is New York City, and we respond accordingly. We will continue to update New Yorkers as we get more information. I will now turn it over to Commissioner Iscombe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to my colleagues for their quick and speedy response to this. I'm pleased to report that there are currently no major impacts or safety events related to this earthquake. We're asking all New Yorkers to call 311 to report damage or any issues that you're having. Also, if you have any need for disaster assistance due to damage or anything like that, please call 311. That is the best place to refer those needs. If you have a life safety issue, please use and call 911 immediately, but preserve 911 for those life safety events. The team acted immediately. We convened our emergency response teams and issued guidance to the public. The likelihood of aftershocks remain low, but we do remain vigilant, and we ask all New Yorkers to remain vigilant as well. We activated our protocols for this earthquake. We immediately started coordinating with all city, state, federal, and our utility partners. Public notifications were sent out both by Notify NYC and our wireless emergency alert system. You can hear some of the phone buzzings and delays from that have been issued. As soon as it happened, we convened here at New York City Emergency Management in order to be able to send out guidance. We activated, as soon as we convened here at NYSEM to send out our guidance for what happens during an earthquake, including on the possibility of aftershocks. We contacted our City Hall and agency commissioners, as well as all of our partners at the federal and state level. That also includes all of our utility partners, our transportation partners at the MTA, Port Authority, and the airports. While there is a low likelihood that there will be aftershocks, we always want to be on the safe side. So if you are outside during an aftershock, please move to an open area away from buildings, trees, and power lines. If you are driving, pull over to a safe location. We're asking people to check in on their relatives, on their loved ones, neighbors, especially the children and their other individuals. I think that this is also an incredible time just to remind us all to make sure that we're prepared. So if you are a New Yorker, if you're visiting New York, we encourage you to sign up for Notify NYC. This is available in 14 languages, including American Sign Language.
I do not understand why they need 14 different languages for these alerts. We are a 26 letter, like the public school education is 26 letters. And on my schedule, it was English language arts. Just what it said on the schedule. I don't know why when the technology portion or arm was deployed or was moved, or like however they're using their words to connive and whatever they do it, whatever. I do not understand why it had a 5-letter pattern of a geographic population halfway around the world that's attached to Russia and not North America. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. But then again, it's 1 of 7. It's ONE of 48, and it's 1 of 50, where I am in the monetary system that has very specific genetic heritage and links. So, but space equipment, for some reason, came with a label, which I don't know how to dispute that label in order to protect myself, my son, my medical notes, and so on and so forth. It seems like a very potentially dangerous topic to even raise one's hand on, but I wouldn't even know who to raise it for or with. But 14 languages seems like a bit much. I mean, like, that's at like the elite and well educated. This is public school. 26 letter English alphabet is what we all learned in 48 states. Why at any point would that be changing so drastically where it has to be enhanced to 14 languages? Who are these other 14 language speaking persons, and why is English not a priority for them to learn, since I was the one who was like the least educated in that grouping?
Over 1 million subscribers. You can sign up by calling 311. You can call up by downloading the app or by going to nyc.gov.
And one of my service members passed away yesterday. Number 4 of 10.
Notify. We also encourage people to make sure that they have an emergency kit and to make sure that they know the guidance for earthquakes, which, as the mayor said, to drop, cover, and to get under furniture, sturdy furniture, or in a doorway to make sure that you are safe. Please also make sure that you're checking your utilities, that you know how to turn them on and off, especially if you are a property owner. With that said, who am I turning it over to? Chancellor Banks. I'll turn it over to Chancellor Banks for an update on the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. So the earthquake was felt across the entire city and across many of our schools across all 5 boroughs. In fact, I was at LaGuardia High School at an event this morning when the earthquake hit. I did not personally feel it, but many people in the room felt it. So first and foremost, what's most important to understand is we want to emphasize that we've received no reports of any injury to staff or students. And that's the most important thing, is safety is our top priority in ensuring that everyone is safe in our schools. Immediately following the earthquake, our teams, both within New York City Public Schools and across the city, immediately jumped into action. We've been in close and constant communication with City Hall, the Office of Emergency Management, School Construction Authority, and other agencies as well. So at this moment, there is no indication that any of our buildings were compromised. And our facility staff at the School Construction Authority are quickly and thoroughly inspecting buildings to ensure safety. And out of an abundance of caution, we've assembled all of our building response teams as well. So we've instructed all of our school principals to continue operations and dismissal as normal. We ask the school staff and families to remain calm and to model that for all of our students, all of our children. Parents do not need to pick up their child early as a result of today's earthquake. Additionally, all after-school programs will continue as planned. If conditions change, our schools will communicate directly with families. We also will post updates on our social media pages, which can be found at NYC Schools. I want to thank all of our school staff and our facility staff for keeping our students safe during times like these. Their professionalism in the face of an emergency is a role model for all of our students. Again, the top lines: all of our students across the school system are safe. All of our staff are safe. We have no reports of any structural damage to any of our school facilities, while many schools have felt some tremors from the earthquake. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chancellor. Next, we'll hear from Buildings Commissioner Jimmy Otto.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Let me say right at the outset that we at the Department of Buildings have not seen an influx of calls regarding building damage. But we want all New Yorkers to know that our team is ready. We are putting on additional construction and engineering professionals from this point on over the weekend. So if reports do come in, we will be ready to respond. Our construction enforcement unit is out doing inspections similar to what we do prior to big storms. There are 1.1 million buildings in the city, which means we need cooperation from construction professionals. We've messaged that to them, but let me take this opportunity again to remind all of our construction professionals, you need to go out and check on your buildings, even if those sites are closed, and determine that the sites are secure. And if you see any conditions that are troublesome, please reach out to the department. This is a time for that tried and true saying, if you see something, say something. So to New Yorkers, we at the Department of Buildings are concerned about some of the downstream possibilities, cracks that you might see that may materialize and manifest in a week or a month, or scaffolding, retaining walls. If you see something that is problematic, please call 311. This weekend, we will have an increase in our emergency response team. We've mobilized our borough operations and our special ops folks so that if our sister agency, the fire department, or any of our partners in government or the public report an increase in locations, we are at the ready to respond.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, we'll hear from Con Ed President Matt Ketchke.
So, thank you. So, for our energy delivery system, energy infrastructure, there were no impacts from this event. We continue to monitor them. Our critical energy infrastructure is continuously monitored. During the course of the event, we saw no change in status for our energy infrastructure. We do have a series of protocols for after an earthquake event. We have initiated those. Those involve inspecting our critical facilities and working through all our facilities for inspection. Those inspections are ongoing. We haven't identified any issues. In the case of an earthquake, one of the things that for me...
So I don't need to hear the redundancy between them. I've already sat through it once before. But it's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. I think that's enough of like the whatevers. But the most important story that they've taught us recently is this, I believe, expert from a legend of the wooden shoes. While I'm here in New York.